Finally, in this session, I'm delighted to welcome Guillaume Cartier, Vice Chairman and SVP for Marketing and Sales for Africa, Middle East, India, Europe, and Oceania, and President of Africa, Middle East, and India. Friederike Kienitz, Region Vice President for Legal, External and Government Affairs and Communications. Francisco Carranza Sierra, Managing Director for Nissan Energy, and Diraida As-Saraire, Director of Communications for Africa, Middle East, India, Europe, and Oceania. From our commercial partner Nissan, to take the floor and share its vision for the future of mobility, in particular to discuss how electrification technologies are key to unlocking the full potential of electric vehicles, transforming energy systems, and accelerating the growth of smart cities.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for the introduction from Expo. We'd like to thank you for joining us for the Pre-Expo 2020 program series on climate and biodiversity. We're hosting this session as part of our partnership with Expo 2020 on mobility, and we are talking today about electrification and the future of mobility. I'd like to introduce to the stage Guillaume Cartier, Senior Vice President, Vice Chairman for Africa, Middle East, India, Europe, and Oceania, also President of Africa, Middle East, and India. Guillaume is particularly leading our transformation as an automotive partner in the region to bring in mass EV within the consumer portfolio of smart and future mobility. I also would like to introduce to you Friederike Kienitz. Friederike is a lawyer by training. She is the Vice President for Legal, External Governmental Affairs, and Communications. Friederike led the engagement for the Renault-Nissan Alliance at COP21 in 2015. With the automotive industry in a state of change, new regulatory and policy trends and emerging in Europe, Friederike and her team aim at transforming the company's engagement and communications approach to include all stakeholders. She's particularly keen to make the company's new technologies and electrification strategy accessible to all and demonstrate the broader benefits of these technologies to individuals, societies, and economies. And lastly, I'd like to introduce Francisco Carranza. He is the Managing Director of Nissan Energy and in charge of products and services related to the electrical vehicle grid integration, mainly vehicle to grid and smart charging. And he is also managing the portfolio of products in the renewable energy generation and storage, leveraging Nissan's know-how and expertise in lithium batteries and customer focus. Before I start, I think I'll start with you, Guillaume. The industry, the automotive and mobility scene has seen a lot of shifts recently, from new technologies impacting the way we approach mobilities to lastly, the pandemic that impacted us in the last 10 months. From your experience, can you shed some light on what we're seeing within the automotive sector globally and in the region?
Hello everyone, and thank you for joining. First, I hope that you are all safe in those particular moment and with the COVID. So hope you and your family are well. Now to answer this question, is there any mutation, any big change within the automotive industry? The answer is yes. It is yes, because we have the change in terms of environment, change in terms of customer expectation, and change also in terms of digitalization. And that has been exacerbated with the COVID-19. So within that, we can see that the consciousness and the people are more caring about the future, about the globe. And I used to say people are more green in their mind. Not only the customer, but also government regulation that wants to make sure that the life of tomorrow will be safer from an emission point of view. And we can see that Paris Climate Agreement or China Carbon Pledge are really the demonstration of the engagement of the government and the regulator. From Nissan point of view, we are engaged in this mutation, and clearly we are using the fact that we want to be zero emission and zero fatality. What does it mean? Zero emission is different OEM are choosing different technology. We are firm believer that an electric vehicle is the technology we have to focus on. Doesn't mean that we don't care about the other, but EV, electric vehicle, is something we truly believe in it. And zero fatality is to make sure that we limit, thanks to our technology, the accident, and we protect our customer.
Thank you. I think Nissan has been here for 6 decades and was part of the mobility scene, building the region's economies and societies. Where do you see that mobility scene taking the journey to in the future, within the GCC and specifically within the UAE?
So yeah, Nissan loves Middle East, Nissan loves GCC, and Nissan loves UAE. And this is really demonstrated through a strong presence. So we are really happy. We have many customers. We have really a strong partner. And here you can see that Nissan has a strong resonance, of course, with the petrol, which is helping and demonstrating and helping our reputation. Now, when we heard that Expo will be organized in Dubai in 2020 and that the theme will be mobility, of course, that was a double opportunity. One, to speak about mobility, and also to be within one of the favorite parts of the globe in Dubai for Nissan. So this is where we are, and this is huge opportunity where we want to demonstrate the smart mobility that Nissan can show and match the theme of the Expo 2020.
Interesting that you mentioned the alignment with Expo on the theme of mobility, but I think the alignment of Nissan is also within sustainability and within connectivity. And so there's a strong relation that we have with Expo on these 3 pillars. And I think I want to ask you, sustainability has brought in a lot of shifts in mobility for Nissan, specifically for electrification. What are some of the breakthroughs that Nissan has done, achievements in this space globally? If you can talk to that a bit about that, Guillaume. Thank you.
Yeah, so back on the Expo 2020, we know that we will be hosted as a main sponsor, and we will be in the pavilion mobility. So that's perfect alignment. Now, as you said, we, without any arrogance, believe that we can bring something because we have a leadership on electric vehicles, and we have demonstrated it. And that's why I think it's really good that we have some experts with us that will explain more in detail than me, like Federique or Francesco. But the reality is we have been really the first brand to launch electric vehicles to the mass market, and Leaf is a massive success. We have delivered more than 500,000 Leaf, so something we have started 10 years ago. So we had many partnerships with many country cities to make sure that we develop the ecosystem that could help the development and I would say the number of customers that are adopting EV, and Leaf is a good demonstration. So that's something that we have the experience, and also, which is really important, by doing that, when we look at the satisfaction of the customer, this is one of the highest in terms of satisfaction among all the cars that we are delivering. So we are able to supply the car, and if we have the right partner and the right ecosystem, this is a winning solution for sure.
Thank you. Federique, Guillaume mentioned customers and consumers. What would be your advice and the priorities that governments and cities need to work on to encourage customers to shift from traditional vehicles to EV?
Thank you, Raida. Guillaume has talked about the experience and the partnering we have done now over the last 10 years, and we have learned a lot about consumer behaviors and attitudes, as well as the fears and constraints around this. And also Guillaume touched upon it. Once a consumer has switched to an electric car, there is no return. They so much enjoy the technology, the silence of drive, and the responsiveness of this car, that they don't want to go back. So the question has been always with the governments and with the cities, how do we encourage the consumers to make the switch, and to make the choice for an electric car? And obviously, the variety of models the variety of choice is important, and we have enriched our electric vehicles with a variety of models. And also range anxiety is often still a blocker for consumers to make the switch, even though I would say we would reach the tipping point now with ranges from 300 up to 500 close to, but the infrastructure is fundamentally important in that, in encouraging consumers to make the switch, to make sure they have access to charging where they need it, at the place where they need it. And Norway is the great example. You know, they have invested into the infrastructure in 2008. That was 2 years before the first mass electric vehicle, or Leaf, came on the market. So you see now the success in driving the switch lies with obviously investing heavily into the infrastructure, making sure the consumers have confidence that they can charge their car. Purchase incentives are still important to give the consumers the incentive to buy electric. The level of price is still not yet comparable with an ICE because of the cost of the technologies. But what is a very powerful tool for cities are the soft incentives. And this is really where you see also cities driving a change: access to free parking, access to parking space, access to special lanes in congested cities is quite an attractive tool to get consumers making a switch. What we have learned really is that cities are often a driving force. They have a lot of power to make a switch. Why? Because they are close to their citizens. They know what is needed. And those examples like Oslo, but also Lisbon, California, Singapore, are showing us how much of change can be done. But that goes with a bold political commitment and then a close collaboration with the various stakeholders that are important to drive the change.
Thank you, Frederique. I think I'm just going to go back to Guillaume. Given what Frederique has mentioned, where do you see the journey to electrification in the region going, specifically within the UAE, given the parameters that Frederique spoke about?
I think this is something that can develop for sure. As it was explained by Frederique, it's not only with one OEM, with one car manufacturer. So we need to make sure we have the full ecosystem that can welcome electric vehicles. And here, Nissan is more than ready to see how we can succeed in that dimension. So again, that we are in contact with the governments, the authorities, and also we have this Expo 2020 to even put that under the radar.
Thank you, Guillaume. Just getting back to Frederique, you've heard about the journey within the region, and what can governments or cities do to accelerate that change and shift to a much more enabling environment for electrification?
Yeah, Europe is probably a very good example where you see how much policies are actually driving a change. In Europe, you have seen strong policies with a bonus-malus scheme. We have penalties on reaching certain levels of CO2s. You have diesel taxation, and on the other hand, strong government incentives to incentivize the purchase of electric vehicles. On a national and city level, also, you have seen in Europe in particular, a lot of countries setting deadlines when they want to stop selling new ICE vehicles. And the range depends on the countries. You have France with 2040, you have the UK 2035, potentially even earlier. And what stands out actually is Singapore. Singapore wants to ban all ICE vehicles from the road from 2040. These are obviously very strong measures to accelerate a shift. On the other hand, cities are introducing low emission zones, which have a significant impact actually on the last mile delivery fleets. And we have been supporting the journey with our electric van, supplying the DPD Chrono Pass for their fleets, but also electric taxis for the cities in London, Barcelona, Madrid, and entering into various partnerships to support that policy framework and the acceleration of that switch. Obviously, and I think I've mentioned that earlier, that needs to go hand in hand with having the infrastructure in place to make sure the increasing demand on electricity is captured by the grid. And I would say equally important, when you do those switches and governments are driving this, they obviously also need to lead by example. And we see very good examples across the globe of governments also changing their fleets. So it's a lot of questions around this topic, but what is important, bold decisions that are required on every side, and a good collaboration here to reach the ambitious aims and targets in the electrification.
Thank you, Frederica. I'm going to switch to Francisca. Francisca, within electrification, there's a lot of potential. You're an expert on vehicle-to-grid or V2G and smart charging. What are the opportunities that will come from shifting to electrification in terms of energy management? And if you can give examples from Europe on this and how the region can actually learn and benefit.
Indeed, there are many opportunities that comes with the integration of electric vehicles in the electricity system. So we learned a decade ago when we started to commercialize the Nissan Leaf in Europe that the electricity system, the electricity grid in our cities is quite old, right? And in most cases, it was not designed to power cars. So this is something we need to take into account. At the same time, we have very ambitious objectives to decarbonize the electricity system. We have more solar, more wind electricity. So we need to put ourselves into a context in which the electricity grid is already saturated locally, and we are adding intermittent energy sources on top of this saturation. So we see electric vehicles taking a role beyond mobility in this space. So the batteries we have in the cars, while the vehicles are parked at your home or in a building, will be providing stability services to the grid to make sure that we can integrate more and more renewable electricity into the system while being smart in the utilization rate of the infrastructure. So the cables at the ground and the substations and all the different pieces of the system. So we started to work very early on with the major utility companies here in Europe, and we have a strong partnership with EDF or E.ON or OVO Energy in the UK, France, Germany, many countries, demonstrating and designing all of these pieces of technology and regulatory, let's say, context in the different countries to make sure that it's not just technically feasible, that there is a business opportunity behind that can be exploited for Nissan and the partners. So we have today hundreds of customers already participating into vehicle-to-grid services across Europe, delivering value to the system, and most importantly, generating also revenues for them, right? So because the vehicle is now going beyond mobility and is providing you a service, the customers are remunerated for these services that they are providing to the system.
Quite interesting that electric vehicles is actually presenting commercializing opportunities for various stakeholders. just a question, you mentioned the consumer here. What role would the consumer play in the future when it comes to energy management? Because they're critical. As more customers use EV, the more we can benefit. But what is the role that consumers play in this part?
It's true. There is a big social movement to empower consumers, right? So we see that in our daily lives, all of us, right? So we want to take more decisions about our future, about the type of services we would like to join, and we see this movement going from central energy assets like power plants or wind farms and so to decentralized systems where the electricity generation is really in the customer house, right? So the customer is empowered to use his car and probably a second life battery that he has in his house, also from us, with solar panels and all of these with powerful digital tools to make sure that it's not only reducing the cost of electricity for his house, but it's also providing a stability service to make sure that the whole country can reduce the energy footprint. So more and more we will see this customer empowerment, and it's clearly a role that all of us and all our customers will need to take going forward.
Thank you, Francisca. Friederike, I'd just like to mention that within all of this, the regulatory framework is quite essential in regulating EV. There are various frameworks across the globe, Europe having the toughest regulations. However, the challenges are quite common. And from your experience, what are the challenges that cities face as they move to electrification? And what are some of the common solutions that you experience and you'd like to share with us today?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. And indeed, while often the solutions need to be tailored to the specifics of a city or of a region. But what is true that every region, every city is exposed to the climate change, is exposed to air pollution issues, and is exposed to traffic concerns. When it comes to electrification, you need to find solutions in the right way for the right region. But you heard from Francisco that the technology has a potential not only is not only there to power the car, but the value of that technology actually sits in the car. That in order to explore the full potential of that technology, we need to have collectively and across governments, across cities, a rethinking of how to integrate that technology in the best way, in the smartest way, into the infrastructure and into the societies. And actually, that's why we are very much promoting across the region and beyond. We know the end game, and is our commitment, 100% electric. But in order to capture the full potential, we need to promote decentralized energy solutions. We need to combine energy and mobility policy power in the policy making. We need to make sure we have a smart charging infrastructure in place. We need to support projects, but also scaling up of that technology. And we need to make sure that we get our consumers and the citizens on board on this journey.
Thank you, Friederike. Great sum up of what cities and governments need to do. And I'd like to give the last question to Guillaume to help us wrap up. What is it that we can do to support the ecosystem development, to support introduction of mass electric vehicles within the market, and make sure the consumers do the shift in the right way?
Well, thank you, Raida, and thank you for the time we have spent all together. I think it was summed up already by Friederike, but let me insist on it. This is not the responsibility only of the car manufacturers. This is much more. And to sum up, first, we need a car manufacturer, and Nissan is ready. We have cars. Then we need to make sure that the customer likes the technology, and this is the case. It's proven outside of the region. And I can tell you, as it was said, when you test it, you love it. This technology is addictive. You don't come back because the pleasure of driving is really big. Then we need to make sure that we have also the government, the cities that are engaging, simply because we need to charge the cars, so we need all the infrastructure to be set up, and we need the regulation to help to make sure that everything is done to promote this new technology. So that's a kind of puzzles where you have many actors, and we wish to work all together. And Nissan is ready, of course, to work more with UAE and with Dubai.
Thank you, Guillaume, Frederica, Francisco, for your time today and such a great discussion on the future of electrification in the region. And we thank Expo for allowing us to have this panel. Thank you for everybody who's joined us today. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you to Nissan for those fascinating insights. We're going to take a short break now and would recommence at 5:30 p.m. UAE time.